All right, this is Johnny Detroit. Let's get started. Let me log into my sports options account. Once again, I'm Johnny Detroit, pregame.com. Let's get right to the action. Don't forget you could use the module to ask your questions. So the first question, who is Johnny Detroit? That's me. I'm the co-founder and vice president of pregame.com. About 6.5 years ago, RJ Bell came to me with an idea for pregame.com. I owned a website called letitridesports.com. I owned a hosting or posting forum called postyourplays.com. And a lot of your core users at pregame are originally guys of mine back in the day, the boys, His Honor, Opie, Goodfellow, the list goes on and on and on. And it's great to see a lot of those guys still involved. A few years before that, I was over at Ford Motor Company as an investigator when RJ said, grow some balls, quit the 9 to 5 and do this for a living. So I did. A couple years later, we clicked and I closed my sites and merged. And here we are 6.5 years later with pregame.com. In terms of betting, not every year has been profitable. I started getting documented officially back in 2004 at the Sports Monitor of Oklahoma.com. And the original service I was under was called Inside Steam. You could go look it up. And it actually was my best year ever. I think I went like 43-18 in college football. And I think it was like 71%, like 60-some% in the NFL. Not one in every sport all the time, but since 2004, with 800 plus wagers, my average is around 57%. Back in 2004, I hand selected some guys from the Let It Ride Sports website, including guys like His Honor and the boys. We entered the Las Vegas Hilton Super Contest and actually won. And I sent each of those gentlemen a fat check for $25,000 each. And last but not least, Johnny Detroit. You know what? One of the important things, it's not just sports and gambling and pregame and everything else. I'm also a family man. I got a lovely wife. I have 3 little ones. And it's the thing that keeps me going, working for Mr. Slave Driver RJ Bell 7 days a week, basically 24/7. And a lot of you who deal with me on a regular basis, you always will see a lot of times those late night emails, say from an iPhone. That means I'm watching TV or out and about, and I just can't help myself. I guess I'm a total junkie. So that's who Johnny Detroit is. When we get to the Q&A, if there's anything I'm missing, feel free to ask. So let's get right to the nitty gritty. Making bets, buying selections is one thing. And I'm not saying that these guys don't exist, but almost every professional gambler that I know in sports, they do other things besides just bet the games themselves. They bet props, they middle, they scalp, they bet futures. And there's times that you may have a losing week, losing month, losing season, and doing these other forms of gambling outside of the norm will sometimes help offset those losses. About 2 years ago, I had a really rough college basketball season. And it was unfortunate for me for betting. It was unfortunate for the wife because the stress that I had. Fortunate for my kids because they learned the F word used in many, many different ways through the vents in the house for me screaming and yelling down here. And unfortunate for my clients. But the one thing to help offset the bad year that I had is in college basketball in the NBA, you have so many opportunities to middle with line moves and injuries and getting ahead of the steam that you could help offset where you could have a losing day of actually betting. But with the other opportunities of middling totals, you could help offset that. So, okay, it sounds fine and dandy, Johnny. So how do I go about doing that? Well, the first thing before we get into everything, let me explain. I don't know anyone who's listening or watching this live has ever watched The Wire when it was originally on HBO. Me and RJ are partners. I guess you could say he's more of a Stringer Bell type. I'm more of an Avon Barksdale, more of a street kind of guy. I was running for bookies when I was younger. I grew up around the homeboys, and my life's been a little bit different. So this webinar might not be the most overly professional thing. I might slip up with some bad words here and there, some improper grammar. It might not follow something you probably see at your 9 to 5 work in terms of a PowerPoint presentation. But you know what? As Popeye says, I am what I am, and I'm going to go through everything, and I'm going to basically tell you how I do things. So the first thing we're going to do, and this is going to be different from any webinar that anyone has ever tuned in with. is I'm going to be sharing my actual private computer screen to show you some things rather than just doing the PowerPoint. So the first thing, it's easy to be in the forums, and you got guys like Lloyd Christmas who are great at math, but you'll see him quoting things or saying things, and you really don't understand how he came up with those numbers. So maybe you're jotting it down, or you're trying to mentally remember certain things with key numbers, or what a correlated parlay is, or whatever it may be. Well, Lloyd's a bright dude, don't get me wrong, and I love him. He's a huge asset to the community. But Lloyd didn't come up with a lot of this stuff on his own. He took the time to research and read, and there's a lot of great information out there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to show you some of that right now. I'm going to share my screen, and let me get rid of my handy-dandy Pandora and the handy-dandy forums page. The first thing is I would definitely read is there's a book, and Amazon is always the best. I'm going to show you something in a second. And when you do find these books, is always go to Amazon first, because it's always going to be cheaper. And if you are buying a lot of stuff on Amazon, I do recommend joining their Prime service, because you get free shipping and a lot of other perks and bonuses. Sharp Sports Betting by Stanford Wong. Yeah, he saved the 2009. How could it be up to date? You know, this isn't a book on internet marketing where every month Google's changing some kind of analytics or metrics or something that they're doing, where a book that's that old is going to be obsolete for what you're trying to do now. For the most part, the statistics and whatnot he has is universal. He goes over teasers. He goes over key numbers, betting futures. My advice, the first book, if you haven't read it, is Sharp Sports Betting by Stanford Wong. Go on Amazon and read it. To me, it's almost like Doyle Brunson Super Systems for poker players. Another great book is King Yao's Weighing the Odds in Sports Betting. A lot of the information is similar to what's in Sharp Sports Betting by Stanford Wong, but he has some things that he's come up with, or some different information. But to me, it's a great add-on to the Sharp Sports Betting. So once again, Weighing the Odds in Sports Betting, and look, it's $13.57, and best the way I could explain it is, for $14 and the time it is to read, if these books save you one bet, maybe jumping off a certain bet and whatnot, it makes a lot of sense. Conquering Risk, Attacking Vegas and Wall Street's another great book. They have a thing at the end where they break down all the key numbers. I definitely would take a look at that. The Gambling Bookshop in Las Vegas has a website, and this is where it goes back to using Amazon to get to the best price. Is Dr. Ed Meyer, who is actually a pregame pro, and he is a real doctor. He wrote a great book, and one of the most popular questions that I get is money management. There is not a person that I met, or anyone who's listening to this probably knows, that understands math and gambling more than this guy. And he wrote a book on money management, winning in the NFL, for $29.95. Ed's at Pregame. I know Ed personally. If you're interested in Ed's book, I could forward you to him. I actually bought a copy. I haven't received it yet. And you can cut out the middleman and save yourself some money. So the first thing is read. Understand the math. Understand the numbers. Understand the edges with the teasers and everything else. So that's my first advice. The next one is get yourself, if you are betting seriously, a line service. I'm a fan of Sports Options. Rick Allen, who owns Sports Options, used to be one of the head guys at Don Best. They brought in some corporate people, got rid of a lot of the street guys. Rick left and started his own line service. If you're just a recreational guy and you're betting small, this might not be for you. They give a free 1-week trial. You can check them out at sportsoptions.com/JD. There's a lot of different benefits to this besides, say, okay, I don't have 20 out, so what's the value in this for me? Why would I even want this? Well, first off, look at some of the books here that I have. Low Vig, BetKill, Players CR, Buckeye. You always hear people talk about Chris or Pinnacle. Well, some of these credit type shops, they have agents in there that take sharp action, that take big bets. And if you could learn and follow this, a lot of these books will actually move before the Chris's, before the Pinnacles. And what that does is that's going to allow you to get ahead of a move. And you could also see certain books when they're leaning a certain way. Is the juice weighted? Is everyone else sitting at a 4.5? and they're sitting at a 5, or vice versa. There's a lot of really great features. They have notifications on injuries. And to be honest, a lot of the injuries that come up through this are faster than an ESPN or faster than anything in the major media. So even if you're a fantasy football guy, I don't know how many times that I found that a guy wasn't playing or got hurt, and I was able to take advantage of it and pick a guy up before anyone else in the league could. It has analysis. It breaks down injuries, tells you where the game's at, weather. It has a lot of other great features. Line history, past scores. Did you miss some of the critical notices by a certain day? Stats, injuries. You could actually set up the columns themselves by the books. So if there's certain books you particularly like to follow, maybe there's an offshore that you're betting with, or you have a local that plays on credit that's using one of these, and you want to be able to track the line so you're always getting the best line. You could set it up per sport. These are some of the books I like to follow. It comes with the default. This is the format that I use. Pinnacle, obviously. Grande is a very, very sharp book. Chris, no brainer. And some of the credit places. Buckeye's a really old school credit shop with some sharp guys, so I like to follow them. Also, some other features it has is you can set up notifications for middles, say key moves, certain odds. So say you handicap a game and everyone's sitting at 6.5, and you like the dog and you think that the public is going to move to 7. You could set an alert to remind you to say, I want to pop up when this happens. So you could actually set up middles and a lot of different features for what you're trying to accomplish. So my advice, if you're a big bettor, it's a must-have. If you're a guy just trying to understand the numbers, or even if you have, say, a local that's not moving numbers, it's worth having. And like I said, first thing, don't buy, don't spend the money. Go to sportsoptions.com/JD. Try it for a week. In the event that you like it, Rick provides a lot of content for pregame. Me and him have been friends for years. Rather than having kind of affiliate or kickback deal, I just tell him to take any money that he'd be kicking me back and take what he'd be selling it for and take it off the price. So there's a lot of guys with pregame who bet bigger. Some of the middlers and scalpers that use pregame that I've hooked up before, and they could attest that Rick takes really good care of his clients, and he's also taking care of them on the price. So if anyone has any questions as I'm going along before we get to the full Q&A, make sure you jump them in. I have 3 or 4 ready in queue, and then I got 2 or 3 that were actually emailed to me. So the next thing we're going to go to is scalping. And the spreadsheet I'm about to show you, there was a guy used to post in the RX back in the day, and it was mucho years ago. Me and him used to scalp at Pinnacle and Sports Interaction, and he had a program and I had a program, and it would literally just filter the places and say, hey, you can get plus 110 here, minus 105 here. And a lot of people don't understand the math. Give me 1 second. A lot of people don't understand the math of how to get this to work. What the hell is it at? Why the hell is this not opening? There we go. Okay. So let me make this bigger so you guys can see this. Now this is one of the coolest tools. When you hear Lloyd Christmas sometimes quote when he'll say, this is the best scalp you're going to see, whatever you're going to see. And like I said, my guy back in the day, he created this. This was probably 10 years ago. Like I said, Sports Interaction, Pinnacle, back when you could even deposit on these books via PayPal. He created this to make it easier to do the math. And he sent it to me. So I can't take credit for making it, but I've saved it ever since. And I've shared it with countless amounts of people. So if this is something that interests you, shoot me an email, Johnny at Pregame. I have no problem taking it and sending it over. So I'll give you an example. So right here we have one in where one shop has the underdog minus or plus 130. The second shop has minus 120. Now what it does is there's one set of bets, what's called an even arbitrage from the dog. So you bet $1,000 on the dog to win $1,300. The other shop, you want to risk $1,254. A lot of times, me and RJ, when we used to middle back in the day, or scalp a lot, is so you kind of run under the radar. This does precise math, so you win under the radar. We do like, $1,250 or $1,260 or whatnot. And now this is the amazing part. And let me explain for a second before you go, wow, 45 bucks, what a waste of my time. No matter what happens, so say one book has the Royals plus 130 and another shop, especially if you're playing with locals and they shade the lines based off local teams and you got multiple outs. Or you have a shop that caters to sharps, so the lines are adjusted one way, and then you got another shop that caters to public bettors, so they're overweighting the public teams. And that's one of the things that we used to do is we'd bet at Pinnacle and Sports Interaction, or we would bet at like a Blue Marlin and a Wager Street, and it would always be a sharp versus a square. And if you have a phone local still, God bless you. You definitely want to do what I'm going to be telling you right now. You will be winning, no matter what happens in that game, $45. So this is just one game. When we used to do this back in the day, when I actually had the time before 3 kids in pregame, we were hitting tons of these. And if you just made $100 a day doing this, $100 a day comes out to $36,500 per year. Unless you're some big Wall Street cat or you happen to buy Apple when they're still in the garage, I guarantee there's probably nobody really watching or listening to this that your 401k is making you $37,000 a year. And then this is also based off of $1,000 increments. So yeah, if you're betting a nickel, it goes lower. But the thing is if you have out with credit, you want to fire as much as possible because, just for sake of argument, say you got a credit out with guys that you trust that are local, and at the end of the week, you're really borrowing from Peter to pay Paul, and it's really never coming out of your pocket. Now it automatically changes to $90. And it's not just baseball. NFL money lines. A lot of books, when they're getting hit with the spread action, they're moving the spread, and maybe sometimes the money line goes the other way. I used to hit some crazy scalps on NFL Sunday about 30 minutes to game time. When those books are getting hammered and they're moving back and forth and they're getting hit with the sharps and the public's coming in and they're trying to adjust, those money lines are all over the place. And if you're quick, you can make yourself a couple $100 for doing nothing. And this goes back to what I said originally. You will have those days, weeks, months, whatever seasons, where a pro that you're buying or your own handicapping that you're not going to win. And adding in something like scalping could help either make it a more profitable week, month, season, or help offset some of those losses where it becomes a little more bearable. Now, for some of the other tabs, you have the even arbitrage from the fade, which is kind of the same thing, but that is more weighted. Say, for example, the reason they're both on there is sometimes you could have a larger limit at maybe the square book or versus the sharp book. So you could alter the numbers based off where your limits are. So if one of the books the favorite place maybe allows you to bet more, then you could bet more at the fave, so then you could adjust it there. Now the fave and the dog scalp, this is something that RJ used to dabble with back in the day, and this predates pregame and very beginning of Let It Ride when we were just straight grinders. Is we had to believe that the places like Pinnacle and whatnot were going to be often right over the square shops. So what we would do is instead of locking in the pure profit, which was always my argument, RJ felt let's go for more of a gut sell, is say Pinnacle was the place that was weighted towards the dog and the favorite was maybe the square play in this instance, just for sake of argument. I know usually the sharper plays the flip-flop, but let's do sake of argument. The increments you bet, you would either break even or you'd win $166. So you have the two scenarios here where you say, I'm going to lock in my $90. I don't care what happens. Then there was the one, if you feel the one book is maybe a little sharper than the other one, you could weight it that if you lose at the sharp book, you basically are going to double up at your square book. And we'd use that in certain instances, and to be honest, it would kind of depend on the game and the sport. And the best advice I could use is track everything, because you'll start picking up variables. You might notice that if it's a MLB total between your local and Pinnacle, just for sake of argument, that you always want to weight it, that you're going to lose at Pinnacle and you're going to beat your other guy So then you're going to weight the scalp towards a favorite or a dog scalp. If it's between two books and you're not really sure who's sharper, so maybe it's something between, let me give you a good example, like Five Dimes and a Bet Online. You know, depending on the sport, depending on the move, it's not like a Bodog versus Pinnacle. Bet Online and Five Dimes are maybe a little sharper tiered books, but they're not Bodog and they're definitely not a Pinnacle on either end of the spectrum. So you might not really be able to gauge and say, okay, I trust this Five Dime move more, so I'm going to weight it where if I lose with Five Dime, I'm going to break even, and if I win at Bet Online, I'm going to win more. So you might want to do the even arbitrage from the dog in those instances. But on the flip side, if there is an edge, do it the other way. And like I said, anybody wants this, you're free to shoot me an email. And it goes across all sports. I mean, guys like Lloyd Christmas, I mean, to be honest, we talked a lot offline via email, is stuff like tennis, NASCAR matchups, a lot of those obscure sports. I mean, I know these guys offshore, they don't have 15 guys watching every sport. They're focused on the main sports, and they'll have something, you know, like a sports options up where they're watching, you know, the main screen, and they might have this up on one of their screens, and they're just going to glance at it unless they see something blink. If they see this blink, like see right here, so they see that, maybe they're lying. They're, all right, Hector, change more Ramiro and DeMarco to minus 130 plus $1. They're not solely staring at tennis and whatnot. So those 15, 20, 30, $40 pops, it's free money and it's no risk. And to be honest, the biggest asset of it, not as much nowadays, more so back in the day, but I mean, a lot of books, especially around the beginning of seasons or the bowls or the playoffs, they'll always offer these bonuses. The biggest benefit of this is for you watching and listening who post stuff offshore. How many, raise your hands, are aware what a turnover is? So you deposit your nickel, they give you a free $100, and they say you got to turn your account over 10 times to get the free $100. Okay? Now, what we used to do, and the sports books hated it, but there was no way for them to know what we were doing. But the smarter ones kind of got a feel because they would see the way we were betting. Say you put money in Bet Online, you put money in Bovado. They give you a 20, 25% sign-up bonus, whatever it may be. So you max it out and you got $1,000 in free money. What you do is you do what we used to call scalp the money out. So not only are you grinding out chump change, you're meeting your bonus requirements. So maybe there's a, you know, let's look at the lines again to get find a good example. So maybe there's a let's find a big game. Say there's a tennis match that's 340. So this usually you're not going to see. This isn't one showing, but I'm just going to, for sake of argument. So you have a minus 340. If you had a plus 340 even, you weren't even making the money, or it was a plus 345 or something. You bet as much as you can at the minus 350 shop. Then you go to your other bonus shop and you bet what you can on the other side. And you're either breaking even or grinding out a scalp. But what you're doing in the end is you're meeting your bonus requirements. And you're, I hate to say it, essentially stealing their money because their goal is, all right, we're going to give Joe Public X amount of free money. Our math shows if we make him turn it over 5 times or 7 times what he deposited, X% of those guys are going to be busto, and they're never going to see that free bonus money. They're not stupid. They're not giving that bonus money on a negative expectation. They know what they're getting into, and they know how many times they should have you turn that over in the long term, that they're not really giving you a damn thing. So if you get in the habit of doing something like this, so even if you have one shot that you're depositing, getting a bonus, and you got a local, and you could do this with, it's free money. So before I close, 1, if you want the spreadsheet, shoot me an email. 2, you could grind out money for free. 3rd, you can meet your bonus requirements. Now, okay, it sounds all fine and dandy. 1, takes time. 2, can make mistakes. And when you're grinding out $90 at a time, if you make a boo-boo, and I've done it before. I remember there was a MLB total. I actually had over 9.5 and under 9. the line moved and I wasn't paying attention and I submitted the bet and the game landed on 9. And when you're betting $2,000-$3,000 at a time, trying to win 160, 170 bucks at a time, you're putting yourself down 15 to 20 bets before you get your money back. So my advice is take it slow, double check the lines, and most importantly, don't get greedy and bet a bad line, because I'll tell you this, they will cancel that bet and they will one-side your ass. And the last thing you want to do if you're trying to grind it out piecemeal is to get one-sided. So moving on from there, let's see where we're at before we get to the Q&A. And like I said, if you want to jump in and ask any questions in regards to anything I'm talking about, use the pop-up module. We're going to get to the Q&A in a couple minutes. And last but not least, and this goes back to the reading and understanding the value of numbers. I got a local friend that I'm trying to teach the middle, and he middled the Giants-Philly game. Sometimes he gets middle crazy, and he'll buy points and try forcing middles. In the NFL, the number 3 is worth 21 cents. The number 7 is worth 13 cents. The number 10 is worth 12 cents. Number 14 is worth 11 cents. Those are the 4 most valuable numbers in NFL. College football, they're similar numbers, but they're not as much in terms of value. So why am I telling you this? 1, if you are overpaying for those numbers, more than what the true value is, you should not be doing it. Let me repeat. It's like buying insurance in blackjack. Do not do it. There are instances, and this is too advanced for this webinar, but there are people that will argue in certain scenarios with low totals that the half a point is more valuable versus a high total. So in those instances, it's actually worth buying. And it's similar in blackjack. If there's a high count, a lot of, buying insurance is a sucker bet. But in the event that the account is extra high, I do know blackjack counters, including VR's team, when he was counting, they were counting numbers or counting cards, that they would actually buy insurance if the count was extra high, because there was a high probability that the dealer had a face card and there was actually an edge buying insurance. Do not overpay for the numbers. And, some of these locals will make you overpay. Don't be a sucker. Don't do it. Don't remember the one time that you bought the 3 to the 3, the 2.5 or the 3.5 to the 3, and you think you're smart and you should be doing it. Long term, mathematically, it doesn't make sense. For NFL totals, the number 37 is worth 11 cents. The number 41 is worth 10 cents. And the number 51 is worth 11 cents. Every number but 30, which you're only going to see at the end of the year on a blizzard, so I didn't even bring that up, is well below 10 cents. So buying half a points on totals doesn't really make sense. And going back to the college football point, the number 3 in the NFL is worth 21 cents. The number 3 in college football is only worth 13 cents. So what does that mean? That means you should never buy points in college football. Never, ever, ever. Someone disagrees, I'd love to hear it, and I'll give you props, and I'll even post on the forum, but I have never seen math that said buying it. People hear the 3 in college, and they automatically assume key number, I need to buy it. The number 7, it's worth 9 cents. Not even worth a full 10 cents. The number 10 is worth 11 cents, and every other number is basically worth not really anything. The number 24 is actually worth 10 cents. So outside of that, college football, what it does show is you want to shop and get the 3. If you have some outs and you can get a 3 over a minus 2.5, and you can get the plus 3 at another place if you like the dog, yeah, you want to do that because it is a valuable number. It's worth 13. But spending the money and overpaying in juice, all it's going to do is long-term, it's going to nickel and dime you. And the bottom line is this: they're not going to offer you the bet if they don't have an edge. Over in a lot of shops, and this is another quick tip before we move on to the Q&A. And once again, you could use the pop-up module, and you could ask any questions you choose, and I'll get to them within reason, is correlated parlays. For those who don't know, the general rule is if the total to the spread is 3 to 1, it's what's considered a correlated parlay, because what the expectation is say Florida is minus 21, and then they're playing some podunk school and the total's 42. For Florida to cover the 21, that automatically knocks that total down in half. And any other points potentially could put it over. For the dog to cover, most likely means Florida's not going to cover because the game's going to be closer. And the reason you know that there's an edge in correlated parlays, go look at the schedule, find an offshore that's not a crappy agent shop, but a Chris, Greek, Bovada, five dimes especially. They actually go lower than the 3-1. Their math even says that even below 3-1 gives the player an edge. And if you go in there and you try betting a parlay with the side to the total, it's going to give you an error message. And it's not a software malfunction. It's them saying, sorry, you're not going to bet this because you have an edge. And if you ever think of a scenario where you think something's up, if an offshore doesn't allow you to do it, there's a reason why. So I'm not trying to teach anyone to scam the system. I'm teaching to take advantage of the system. So anyone listening that has a local and they don't know about correlated parlays or they don't know about middling and scalping or line moves, take advantage of it. You know, if they're going to let you bet correlated parlays, do it. And if anyone wants to read a real interesting story, and I hate to bash them because they are a pretty solid book, but a couple years ago, there was a big issue in the industry where sportsbook.com didn't pay a bunch of guys because these guys literally went in there and they were betting the max on any correlation parlay that they could. And I think it was like 100 dimes or something they banged them before. And then sportsbook.com played out. It was a glitch in their software type of nonsense, and it was a big issue. So bottom line, understand the value of the number. By reading it, you understand the number. The line service you can physically see, and like I said, if you're not a big money guy, you don't have tons of outs, don't spend the money on it. I'm not trying to get you to buy Rick's service. Like I said, any deal he's going to give me, I'm going to have him take it off the price to hook you up. But at least try the trial, and to be able to see the numbers move, to me, helps you become more of an educated gambler. And also what it allows you to see is one of the biggest misconceptions of the books always moving the numbers on their action to balance it. Because you will see like a Pinnacle, a Greek, a Chris, do a 2-point move on a total, and you will see 100 books, one after another, click, 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 all moving along with them. Do you really think the fact that they all got bet at the exact same time, or is it they're watching and saying, oh, Chris is sharp, we better move? And there's so much you could learn just by watch this on a Saturday college basketball, a Saturday college football, a Wednesday college basketball, and you know what? And get a notebook, and you go see at certain times, usually between 12 and 1 in the afternoon, the NBA totals. You'll see them one after another get hit. And what you could do is you can keep almost like a journal, because a lot of these guys will start their day, they'll change information, they'll do their power ratings, they'll check the injuries, the schedules, and then one after another, they hit these books. And you could literally see it happen in front of your face. When people talk about steam and movers, you could see it happen in front of you. And like I said, is if you're someone who's in a place that's going to profile you, some of this information might not matter, but there's tons of guys nowadays that still do the phones, and there's tons of guys that are paying some shitty head count place that has a bunch of guys that can't work at a real sports book, answering the phones for $2 an hour, and they don't give a shit about protecting their clients because they're not taking any post-up action. Some of the places like the Five Dimes that have credit players and post-up, they have a vested interest to make sure their lines are good. Head count XYZ, who's only taking head count players, and they're getting paid no matter if you win or lose because all they're doing is booking the action, their lines are not as sharp, they're not moving as quick, and a lot of times there'll be glitches in the software where they'll overpay on a parlay or they're allowed a correlation. I remember I was playing on a head count place a couple years ago. They actually allowed me to parlay puck lines with totals. So when you want to talk about a correlation, take a team minus 1.5 goals and over, a 5 on a total. So if anyone has any questions, use the pop-up. We're going to get right to the Q&A. We're going to close this out with the coupon where everyone's going to get 25% off to spend any way that they choose on one purchase. So let me go right to the questions. Give me one moment. Apologize, I got to keep pausing. I've been on the phone call all day, and my throat is just killing me right now. Where the hell is the name? Other questions. All right, let's get to some of these really quick. Sorry, Rob, I wasn't touting the books, bro. I don't get a kickback or anything. I do get a lot of emails from people who, it was one of the questions. They said, JD, stop touting the damn books. Let's talk some real stuff. But, I get a lot of emails from people who say, these numbers that you guys quote, this information that you're sharing, where does it come from? Where are you getting this from? And, sometimes in the morning video, I will actually reference, books, and a lot of people say, hey, Johnny, what book are you talking about? So that's the only reason I shared that, Rob, so don't bust my balls too much. All right, next question. Do you have any particular key numbers you look for in live betting? You know what? Honestly, I could sit here and try sounding really, really smart and act like I do, but I do not play live betting. I followed it. I've done it to get off of bets or to lock in a bet if a certain team went up by a certain amount and it was almost a free roll, I could lock in a ton of money. But in terms of watching live betting, I will say this though. I do know a lot of sharp guys that do quite well at it. My advice is jump on the forums, ask some of the guys on the site that do it. Lloyd Christmas might be one. I know Brian Leonard. That dude is a straight grinder, and he does a lot of live betting. So maybe jump on Brian's page and ask him. Next question. I have had a considerable success recently teasing NFL home teams moving through 7-3. What is your experience with teasing NFL? Is this profitable long term or a short run of luck? If you are not overpaying for the teaser, it is profitable. And to be honest, this goes back to what I said in the previous segment. If a book doesn't allow you to do it, or they change certain aspects if you're trying to bet it, go to 5 Dimes, look at their lines, and then go to their teasers and look how they adjust the juice. The guy 5 Dimes is historically known as kind of an asshole in the industry, but he's also probably one of the smartest math guys offshore, bar none. And 5 Dimes, the reason, to me, they're almost like a pinnacle with the reduced juice, is they'll pay more because he knows the true odds of everything. So he knows how far he can go where he still shows a profit. And he knows that that certain teasers are profitable. And going through key numbers is profitable as long as you're not overpaying on the juice. And like I said, if anyone has any other questions, feel free to ask them. I'll answer them the best I can. The next one is, Johnny Detroit, is there any particular offshore sports book you endorse? It's a sad thing for me to talk about because, like I said, I remember the day, and I'm only 37, so saying back in the day seems old, is when you used to be able to deposit money via PayPal, and there was places like Pinnacle and all these other shops that took American clients, and it was almost like free money. Today, if I had to pick some, I would say betonline.com, 5 Dimes. If you want some square lines, probably Bovada. And I think 5 Dimes is a great shop, but the thing is you go back a couple years ago, they were technically a tier 2 shop in comparison to the ones that you could bet with. So to me, the offshore industry right now is not what it used to be. A lot of times, the government, what they'll do is they'll go after the processors. So when you'll hear people bitch and moan about this book sucks, I didn't get my money, a lot of it isn't that the book doesn't have the money or didn't pay. It's the fact that their processor is having issues and it's harder to get the money out. Back in the day, they would send you PayPal. Books used to transfer back and forth. I mean, you get literally, you would call up, say, I want my cash. 10 minutes later, you'd have a Western Union number, and you go down to the store and pick it up. But if I had to pick two, I would say betonline.com, and I would say 5 Dimes. So let me grab my phone. Another question. How did you and RJ Bell get started with pregame.com? Well, I kind of answered that at the beginning. A quick little history of me. I was going to U of M. I worked at Ford Motor Company. I was an investigator. Traveled around busting counterfeiter, fraud, whatnot. At a sweet job. Had to let it ride sports. I was middling, scalping. I was taking some action. I was doing some running. And from there, I did the site for fun. And when I started Let It Ride is I went to all these different sites. And what I did is I took the information in terms of what I wanted to see, and I built a site for free. It got a following. I started branding myself in the industry. Started making some money on it. RJ says, hey, you should do it full time. I got some balls left Ford, which pissed off my old man who's a Ford retiree. And I guess the rest is history. RJ came to me and said, hey, he had this site, he had an email list where he actually was sending out free picks from all the big handicappers called Free Picks by Email. And he had a huge list, but he didn't have a portal. I had a portal with a concrete loyal audience. Like I said, the boys, guys like Oopie, Goodfella. And we merged and created pregame.com. Next question. Do you or did you monitor how many wagers you have in the air on any given day? Like no more than 10 games, 20 units. Thanks. Yes. My advice is there's a really cool thing, and it's kind of a pain in the ass, and if you're starting to bet volume, you might not be able to do it. There's a real cool software out there. I think the guys are from Europe. I'm not sure what they charge anymore, but it's called Wager Station. I think the site URL is wagerstation.com. You might have to Google it. It was actually really cool. You were able to log all your wagers. It counted your sportsbook balances, and it had a real cool feature where you could tag your wagers. So you could say, so say you're trying to test the system, and you're trying to test your, for example, Randy, the question you asked about your teasers is you could create parameters and tag different wagers. So you can create a parameter called home teams through 3 and 7. And anytime you bet one, you tag it. And it would have a grid or a graph, I should say, that it would track any of those wagers and tell you your win, loss, and your plus and minus. So say you're testing an underdog system or whatever it is. I used to have a like a cheat sheet that I created that would show for the middle, like the middles especially, where it would show the books, the bet, the team, the rotation, the time I bet them, and at the end of the day, I'd reconcile everything. That's my best advice. And another real good bit of advice I could do is get in the habit of when you place a bet, after you're done, either get in the habit of whatever kind of system you have, Windows or Mac, doing a control print and save the screen or hit print. I have lost count over the years of the people that have come to me and said, JD, I know you know somebody a bet online. I bet this game, it's not showing up. There's so many times. I'll never forget when Ohio State played Miami. I bet I had $1,000 on that game. And I was at the bar celebrating, going crazy because I had Ohio State on the money line. I came home, looked at my computer screen, and it was one of those bullshit, the line has changed, would you like to resubmit this wager screen? It was still stuck on the damn screen. And I never noticed it. I hit to confirm. It was flashing. I didn't notice and walked away. Get in the habit, hit print every time, save it so you have documentation, and most of all, if you are looking to middle and looking to scalp, get in the habit of taking your damn time. Because like I said, I remember in college basketball one time, I had a total, it was like Indiana West and Indiana North, some two obscure schools. There was 70, 80 games going on a Saturday. They happened to be listed one above the other, totally different games. I bet a couple thousand because when I was middling and scalping, I was playing on credit and I was betting, thousands and thousands. At one point, I was betting close to 5,000 to 10,000 a game because my thing was I wasn't really betting 10,000. I was scalping and middling, and if it was all on credit, the most I was doing is losing the juice. So really, I was betting, a couple $100 to 1,000 for a chance to win 10, 15,000. As I'll never forget, I bet the one team, and I was rushing to bet the other one because I knew the total was going to move. Checked my stuff later. My numbers didn't match. I couldn't figure it out. I spent like 2 hours going through everything. I had all these different accounts to figure out where I effed up at. And what I did is I bet the one game, and the other game had a similar team, but it was like a state U or whatever the hell the difference was, and I accidentally bet the other one for the same amount, but on the over-under. Thank God it landed where it was, but I lost so much juice. Pay attention, print it out. It'll give you some backup if there's ever an error. Last question before we get to your coupon. JD, will this webinar be available on pregame later for review? Yes, it will. Each and every webinar. The good fellow one, I love him to death. But when he started, he was one of the panelists. He hit a button, and he actually started it before I could, and I couldn't get to the record. And the second time was with Mike Cooks when I tried converting the file. It got corrupted in the conversion, and I was unable to save it. So those are the only two webinars that are missing. All of the ones we've done so far are listed on the website. I know there was a couple other questions. I sent them to my damn iPhone, and they did not come up. So anybody who sent me a question that I didn't get to, I really, really apologize. What I will do is in the recap of the webinar line, I will take the question and I'll personally answer it there for you. So hopefully this is informative. Hopefully I didn't babble too much like I said. I am what I am. I do it the way I am. There's a lot of information to cover. My best advice is before you try doing anything I said, get some of the books, read them, educate yourself on the numbers, use the forum to ask questions. And if you're going to start scalping or middling, start off slow. Focus on certain things or certain sports. And even if you're making 15 bucks, you know what? It's going to get you in the habit of knowing what to look for. It's going to get you in the habit of monitoring stuff. It's going to get you in the habit of a process of what to do. The line service will get you in the habit of knowing when certain stuff moves. So instead of having to watch the lines all day, and to be honest, maybe you find some obscure shop that's on the sports options line that wasn't on mine. And you know what? If you find out at 11 o'clock, usually bet ZZZ, which is catering to some sharp players, and no one's using, that their NBA totals are magic, or they're moving at 11 o'clock in the morning, and 15 minutes later, all the other books are. You have no clue how valuable that information is. Let me know. There was a book called Bet Vegas Vic that literally you could sit there at certain times of the day, watch the line screen, watch them move, jump in a book, bet everything that moved, and within a couple minutes, all the big books got hit, the line adjusted, then you jump back in another book, and you turn around and bet the other side and take your scalp or your middle. And I see a lot of things that happen, and I'm going to close before I get to the coupon, there's a phrase I heard a lot from movers. There's these guys I was trying to set up in some credit outs, and the deal would have been I would have got them in the credit outs, and then a certain percent of their action I would have gotten. So if they were putting in 5 dimes a game, I would have got 25% responsibility. But the problem is the books that I could have lined them up with, their exact words were these books make too much noise. And what that means is they want to hammer these mom and pop agent shops, because once a book that is more on the screen, they say, moves, then everyone moves. And that's what they call making noise. They want to hammer as many places as they can that nobody knows about, that nobody's monitoring, because once a place like a Vegas Vic or one of these obscure shops people are watching get hit, then everybody moves, like the Grandes and the Catalinas, and when then they move, then the 5 dimes are going to move, then the Sports Interactions and the Bodogs, and literally it's almost like a house of cards or a bunch of dominoes. In the matter of minutes to seconds, that line and that opportunity is now gone. So hopefully everyone enjoyed it. JD made it simple for everybody. You get 25% off any one purchase. You could buy a 7-day, you could buy a 30-day, you could buy a daily package. I guess the funniest one is the last webinar we did, somebody actually used their 25% off coupon to buy the dollar. I mean, God bless you, but I don't know. I probably would have saved it for something else. The coupon expires in 72 hours, and that coupon code is JD. That's me. I'm Johnny Detroit. I appreciate everyone who watched and was involved today. We're going to close with a quick poll. I know most of the people who were involved with this are people that just follow the site. Anyone that's bought me in the past or follow me as just an individual at pregame, I'm interested in what made you follow me. It's popping up on your screen right now. Take a second to vote before we close out the webinar. Did you follow me on the forums or Twitter? Don't even remember. hot streak, whatever it is. So I'm Johnny Detroit on behalf of pregame.com. I appreciate everyone tuning in. Make sure you take advantage of that coupon. And like I said, the webinar in general, if there's anything you missed, a name of the book, the name of the line service, the URL to go to get the special deal, the scalp calculator, whatever it is, it's going to be uploaded on the site by morning time. If you want the scalp calculator, I am watching the debates tonight, so you might not get that until morning. So I want to thank everyone for watching. From me to you, best of luck. Thanks for being a member of pregame.com.